Hello, everyone. Chad Frantzen here, and welcome to the Kingdom Finance Show. Today, we are going to reveal what you really need to know about the economy, the stock market, and real estate. And we're going to give you action steps to take right now to become a Kingdom Impact investor. It's time to bring clarity out of chaos. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kingdom Finance Show. I'm your host, Chad Frantzen. Thanks so much for being here. Hey, on today's program, I'm going to dive into a topic that is one of the kind of core concepts in Wall Street for individual investors, and that's this concept of planning for retirement or investing towards the goal of retirement. And what I want to cover today is, for those of us, if you're following us on the Kingdom Finance Show, if you're connected with me or my colleagues through Wealth Builders and Billy Epperhart and others, then you have a kingdom mindset. You have a worldview that applies biblical principles to how you view life, to how you view interpreting what's going on in the world, how you run your business, how you manage your relationships, how you invest your resources. And so I want to talk about what is retirement for a kingdom investor. So let's dive in on today's show. Thanks so much for being here. The traditional goal in financial planning, I've spent over 20 years in the financial services industry. I worked for some very quality, long-standing brokerage firms. And one of the things that, as I've reflected on my career over the last 20 years, is that Wall Street investment firms primarily focus on two things. If I were to boil it down, one, they're going to focus on you giving them your money and them investing it in their funds, kind of their proprietary products or investments, and just buy and hold. Just give the Wall Street firms the money and let them do the work. Buy and hold. Don't worry about recessions or wars or changes in the economy that might affect your investment. Just stay invested for the long term. Buy and hold. Certainly a concept I was taught, and I think any of my friends and colleagues watching this that are in the financial advisory planning world, I think you would probably agree with that's really the training is just go raise money and put it with the Wall Street firms, whether it's insurance companies, mutual funds, individual stocks, and just buy and hold and tell people that they're going to be okay. Now, the second reason why you do that, or why people are trained to do that in my industry, is because there are these experts who tell you need to save, you need to invest through your company 401k for retirement. Retirement is the number one goal, and close behind that would be things like, well, you need to save for your kids' college, and you need to also prepare your estate for when you die. And so those are the three largest objectives when people that come through Wall Street, kind of Main Street, financial advisors, financial planners, stockbrokers, asset managers, if they're working with retail investors like you and I, and again, I'm just speaking from my experience on today's show. Again, my topic here is, what is retirement for a kingdom-minded investor? So I want to dig into this a little deeper. It's funny, I saw on LinkedIn recently, I was looking through some of my contacts and I saw a person in my industry, and their tagline on their LinkedIn profile was to help 1 million people retire. And then I laughed as I thought about that for what? For what reason? I think it's a noble cause if you have the right motives to help people plan for financial freedom, to reach their goals. Obviously, it's important to have the proper insurance, the proper estate plan set up. It's very prudent to know how to plan for your kids' college and private education, what they're going to do Absolutely. It's important to plan for how much of your income you're saving, whether that's 10% a year, or maybe you're more aggressive and saving 20%, 25% a year. Absolutely. Those are all very noble parts of financial stewardship. But what I was taken aback by was, um, what's the point of helping people to retire? Is it really just so that they can go live in Florida or travel the world, or attempt to get really good at golf, or what's the purpose for retirement? It took me years to get out of this mainstream mindset, that I've kind of shared with you here at the Open. Now, fast forward to today, and many of you know parts of my story of how God's really called me to start applying biblical beliefs, the teachings of Christ, what I call a kingdom worldview into my business, into the world of financial planning and investment management. And I've partnered with my friend and mentor, Billy Epperhard, and been able to be around some other folks like Lance Wall now, who are really, leading the charge for people to step outside of what the world is telling us to do, what the world is telling us to believe, or how the world is telling us to agree with things that are not, they're not in agreement with our values by any stretch of the imagination. And so that's really, for my working in financial services, it's been two different tales of working for people to serve them as a financial advisor, as a stewardship person to them. I guess you'd call it a fiduciary, is what they call it in our business. Now, so what is retirement? So if you and I were sitting together having a cup of coffee, for those of us that have this worldview, right? And so I'm not talking to everyone, but I'm talking to those of you who you feel the call of God to really maximize the impact you're having with your time on earth, with your financial resources, with your creativity, your imagination, your connections, right? Your gifts and abilities. What is retirement for those of us who aspire to make a maximum impact for the glory of God? Well, I want to take a step back into, where did this concept of quote unquote retirement, what's the genesis of that in the United States of America? Now, to do that, we actually have to go to Europe, and we have to go specifically to Germany. So I want to share a little bit about this. I've done some research on it, really some misconceptions on what is retirement. Well, keep in mind the traditional financial system is predicated upon people working in a corporate system in exchange for benefits and a hope to retire at age 65. Some language that you'll see from financial services companies are exclusively geared towards helping you plan for retirement from corporate America. Well, there's pros and cons to that. First of all, if you're going to be in the corporate system, then there are benefits you get, but there's also things that you are not getting. And the day and age of working for a company for 20, 30, 40 years are gone. That does not happen anymore. We see people all the time who are moving around from job to job to job to job. Even Social Security benefits are increasing the age, which I'm going to get into here in a minute, the age at which you can start receiving benefits from the Social Security system. So when we think biblically about retirement, it's not a concept that's found in the Bible, and it really should not be our end goal when we are talking about the financial planning process. So we can look at stories in the Bible such as Moses or Abraham or Caleb, but retirement is not a biblical concept. In fact, we could present that it's really an anti-stewardship approach to how you live out your days, how you manage the time, the gift of time and life that God has given you and I. So, given the fact that it's not found in the Bible, given the fact that it's everywhere in the financial services industry when we talk about marketing and advertising, but what we see is what do you seek? What are you seeking when you're thinking of retirement? Is you're actually just looking to get independence from the corporate system, right? From the Babylonian system that you've most likely had to work under to provide for your way of living. So in some ways, retirement is like this imaginary line on the horizon where you arrive. But I'm going to present to you today that it's not this imaginary line that you're going to cross. It actually, you can gain financial freedom with thinking like a kingdom investor in how you plan, how you manage your companies, your assets, your resources, how you manage your giving. I think there's a better way. And I want to share a little bit more about that. Now, I mentioned to you that some of the history of retirement came from Europe. It came from Germany. In fact, in 1889, I'll give you a little bit of a history lesson today. The German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck engineered a revolutionary concept. Get this. He engineered a revolutionary concept to appease the growing tide of Marxism and socialism that was happening in Germany and that part of Europe. Now, this is 1889. Now, again, a lot of similarities to what we're seeing now in 2023, 2024 with the far left liberal movement of Marxism policies, socialist ideology. So at this time, this German chancellor, he came up with this concept of what he called old age pensions. And it was designed to lure older people out of the workforce, to make jobs available for younger people. So retirement, as it was presented back in 1889, was for those people who could not feasibly provide for themselves and were actually near the end of their life expectancy. Now, back in the 19th century, the late 19th century, the life expectancy, was somewhere around 70 years of age. 75 would be a long life at that time. So this concept that this German chancellor created, one, it was to kind of fight against this Marxism movement that was happening, and it was really for people that were very near the end of their life. Now, in today's day and age, when we think of retirement, people think, well, I'm going to work for multiple companies, and if I can stay with one long enough, or I might work till age 60 or 65, and then I'm going to retire. But thank God we live in a day and age where life expectancies are much longer, right? People are living much healthier lives. There's a lot of help in nutrition, medicine to help us live longer. So life expectancies, not uncommon for people to be living to 90 to 95. And I think we'll continue to see people living well past 100 as we continue to move through this next decade. So again, the concept at its root, I find really fascinating, particularly given the day and age that we are in today. Now, so you might ask, well, connect the dots for me, Chad. How did that get to America? So let's think about not too long after that happened in Germany. That was 1889, 1890. You fast forward to think about what's happening in the U.S. in the early 20th century. We had the Great Depression in the late 1920s. And we had a president, FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt, and he signed, coming out of the Great Depression in 1935, what was called the Social Security Act. And it was based in large part on what the U.S. had observed Germany had started some 35, 45 years earlier. And so that really came out of, it was called the New Deal, coming out of the Great Depression. The Social Security Act was born. Now, modern day financial services have taken this Corporate America certainly we saw coming out of World War II and the baby boomer generation, obviously a lot of big companies. I've talked about this before, but large corporations, that would hire employees, and the men would go off to work, go to the factories. They would work 30, 35, 40 years. And in exchange, they would retire and they would get a pension from the company. And then they would also get Social Security from this new benefit package. And in a large part, you saw men and women who were working coming out of World War II. They would work for one company for decades. It could be a company like General Motors or something like that, right? Where that company is going to pay for their health care. They're going to pay for their pension, a lifetime income after they retire. And then this employee is also going to get Social Security. That really was almost the middle-class American dream of go give your primary working years to one company, and then they're going to take care of you with health care, a lifetime pension, and then you also have Social Security, right? So at its origin, it can be traced back to some of these concepts that were coming out of Germany in the late 19th century. Well, I want to present to you today that retirement is a flawed concept. In fact, there was a study done in the Harvard Business Review that says, and I'll put the link to this study in the notes, that Americans don't actually want to retire and do nothing. They actually want to do something that they love. And we're not talking about, fishing and sailing and traveling. Those are things we love. I really enjoy fishing. I'm trying to love golf. But there was some measure of significance to what the individuals were doing in this Harvard Business Review study. Now, we may want some time to do those fun things, and the idea of sabbaticals and taking a month off to travel the world, that is fulfilling to a point, but it's not going to keep your cup full, right? You would be surprised to learn how quickly the bloom can come off of that type of a rosy retirement, if you will. So in this study, that was one of the key takeaways, that, again, these were all different types of men and women from all different socioeconomical backgrounds in this study. But it wasn't that they were just excited to sit around and do nothing. And in fact, in the study, it talks about 4 different levels that people really, as humans, the way God has made us, that we need 4 things that we need. And the first one was a social component. And they call these the 4 S's. So the first one was social. So having a social structure of friends, peers, coworkers who fulfill that part of you that just needs social interaction, that needs relationship, friendship. Again, we think about how things were during COVID and how, many of us couldn't go to church or we couldn't go into our office, and how depressing that was to just not be around other human beings. And there's a basic need, the way God made us, that we are social creatures for that. The second part of the study found that people really need structure, and that's the second S. And even the idea of an alarm clock ringing in the morning, it gives you, because you have a reason to get up in the morning, right? You're gonna work out, you're gonna have a Bible study, you're gonna get ready to take your kids to school, you're gonna prepare for the day for work, either in your office or from home, or maybe you're traveling, right? But there's this structure. Actually, people get a satisfaction, right, from getting up to contribute to the world around them. And in exchange, you're gonna get some time off. Right? You're gonna be able to structure that to where there are days where the alarm clock's not going off, or you're not going to be in the business for that week, things like that. The third S from the study was called stimulation. So we had social, and then structure, and then stimulation. Really just keeping our minds challenged by constantly learning. Constantly learning something new every day. If you're a book reader, or you like to really get into the Word and just and do studies, but just constantly stimulating our minds, new technologies, new concepts. There's just that need to continually do that for our overall health, which is exactly the way God made us. And then the fourth S in this Harvard business study was story. And this is where I'm primarily going to spend the rest of the program about is story. And again, this is a purely secular study done by the Harvard Business Review, but most people wanted to be a part of something bigger than themselves. And that's most often why they would join a group. And you see this in social media groups, right? You see this all over. Like you want to join a network, you want to join a tribe, right? Because you want to be a part of something who has a higher level purpose or significance than what you could do on your own. So there's many great tribes, that we see that people get a part of. Some of them may be based on, faith beliefs. Some may be based on a business. Some may be based on a educational or academic environment, but story. And so really, this is part of why retirement is really a great fallacy that people often chase. And I can say that in the many years I've worked with many people, helping them retire from corporate America, the most successful people that I've worked with over the last 20 plus years, they were people who were looking forward to get involved in something else. They were ready for that next phase of life. They were going head first into it. The people who did not succeed, it wasn't so much the money aspect. It was the fact that they just didn't really know what to do, right? They were so used to being told what to do, to being in their routine, to where when they didn't have that, they had an inability to come up with, well, what should I do with my time? How can I get involved? And so those people really struggled. I'm not talking so much financially, but just really mentally they challenged. Emotionally, they were challenged by that. And so, certainly when you work for a company and you transition into some form of retirement, or let's call it a different phase of life, you're going to have, some hurdles to overcome when you think about mentally what you're doing and emotionally how you're involved. But the successful people, and I've worked with thousands of people through the years on this, they were ones who they had done a decent job planning and saving and investing, some better than others, but that they really they had taken good care of their bodies and their health and their relationships, and they were really looking forward to move into something that brought some excitement. It might have been a purely volunteer opportunity. It might have been a compensated opportunity. It might have been a combination of things for that. So I think story is a key part of what we're looking for. So when I talk about financial planning in our company at Wealth Builders Investments, I really talk about what I call the kingdom vision process. So instead of just focusing on these Wall Street topics of, well, when do you want to retire from work? What college do you want your kids to go to? How much insurance do you need? Those are all really important. But if we take those concepts and then wrap it with what I call a kingdom mindset, a biblical worldview, the output we get is going to be something very, very different. Right. And, as the great Benjamin Franklin said, by failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Absolutely. So I believe planning is a crucial part of what people in my industry, in the financial services industry, do. I believe that's a critical component. What I do think is missing in a lot of the financial services companies that I know of is how do we integrate our worldview, our values? How do we integrate our values? Let's say it that way, into the planning process to where it becomes much more than just retirement, college, and what happens to my money after I die. But it becomes much more exciting, can I say, to talk about how do you apply your values to your financial planning? How do you apply your values to the companies you're working with or the companies that you own? Some of you that are entrepreneurs and business owners, to the ministries that we're involved with and contribute to. I think that's a key part of what I call the kingdom vision process. Is we really want to apply, all of these concepts that the Bible teaches into how we manage money, how we save and invest. And it's not just about arriving to some magical retirement destination, if you will. All right. I want to close with a couple of final thoughts on this. And I really want to challenge you. I wanted to share this because a lot of people that we meet in our networks, they're working currently with men and women in the financial services industry. But I really want to challenge you, whether you are an investor, a saver, or whether you're a financial professional. I really want to challenge all of us to really apply our values to how we do our financial planning, to how we prepare people for the future, right? Because impact is not just, well, I tithe 10%. It is that, but it's much, much more. And impact is not just, well, when I pass away, I've left a bequest for my retirement account to go to a really great ministry or a church. That's good. But there's so much more impact that we can have, right? And I think the more that we as financial advisors, planners, can get people tapped into what some of the things that really excite them of how God has wired them, right? And I believe retirement in a kingdom sense really comes down to this concept called convergence, where you've worked in your career, or you've been, whatever your role has been. Maybe you've been a stay-at-home parent and now your kids are out of the house and you're going into some type of work that you want to do. But all of work is worship, as we talk about here on the Kingdom Finance Show. But I really believe that retirement is for us as kingdom investors, it's moving into convergence. And what I mean by that is all of your life. And I had the chance to spend some time in a coaching program with Lance Wallnow, who's a friend and mentor. And we talked about this concept that all of life, your highest highs and your lowest lows, all of those go into forming really your identity as you go through the different phases of life. And it's this concept of convergence, where you reach a point where everything that you've done before has really prepared you for this current phase, this season of life that you're now in. So nothing's been lost, even jobs or seasons of life where you think, well, that was kind of a waste of time. It's not. It's actually God's been using and molding and shaping all that into you becoming who God intended you to be. The great Dallas Willard said, all of life is becoming. So really that is our goal. As we walk with Jesus, as we talk about managing businesses, ministries, churches, families, resources, everything God's put in our hands, it really is about our own becoming. Like, who are we becoming through this process? And it's much, much more than reaching a certain asset level. It's much, much more than having a business that has X dollars of revenue. It is that, but it's much greater than that. And that's this concept of convergence, where you're really walking deeper into your story, right? And the story is not just yours. You're a part of this greater story, right? Which we know is the greatest story ever told. It's the gospel of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And so that's really my encouragement is when we look at financial planning for the future, investing for the future with money, with our businesses, with our churches, ministries, we want to think of how is this tying into the larger story, the great love story that God has written that we are a part of, right? And I think, there's a couple of final thoughts here. There's a poem I want to share I'm going to wrap up here on today's show, from Walt Whitman, and it was written in the late 1800s. And what he talks about is, let me just read it. It's pretty short. It's called "Oh Me, Oh Life" by Walt Whitman. "Oh me, oh life, of the questions of these recurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the foolish, of myself forever reproaching myself, of eyes that vainly crave the light, of the objects mean, of the struggles ever renewed, of the poor results of all, and the plotting and sordid crowds I see around me, of the empty and useless years of the rest, with the rest me intertwined." The question, O me, so sad recurring, what good amid these, O me, O life? The answer, that you are here, that life exists and identity, that the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. I know that's a little bit old English, but my takeaway to share with you as we wrap up on the Kingdom Finance Show is that we are in the most powerful play story ever told, and that we each get to contribute a verse. So I want to challenge you. What is your verse? How will you plan and manage what God has given you to be a good steward, right? Just like Jesus talked about in the parables. But each of you have gifts and abilities that I do not have. And so we need each other's strength, right? There's a saying goes, iron sharpens iron, but all of us have a verse to contribute. And I think the more we can learn and grow outside of just what the corporate systems tell us. This is how you should do it, right? This is what you should believe. This is how you should work, right? This is how you should think about retirement. I think that goes a long way to us becoming kingdom impact investors. Well, I hope this has been helpful for you today. Again, I just really wanted to share this concept of retirement and what does that mean for us as kingdom impact investors. If you are curious of how to create a kingdom vision plan, our team at Wealth Builders Investments would love to come alongside you. Feel free to reach out to us online, wealthbuilders.net/invest. And you can get a complimentary phone consultation on how to create a kingdom vision plan, really a financial plan that's built around biblical values. It's focused on making an impact of how God made you to uniquely be. And if you're not already working with a financial advisor that has a kingdom worldview, I really encourage you to find one where you live. And if you do not have one, please reach out to our team at Wealth Builders Investments. We would love to help you. Hey, this has been fun. I appreciate you being here. Please like and subscribe to the Kingdom Finance Show, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for joining me today on the Kingdom Finance Show. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps to get the word out. For more resources on becoming a kingdom investor and to connect with us directly, visit our website at wealthbuilders.net. That's wealthbuilders.net. We'll see you next time on the Kingdom Finance Show. The content provided is for educational purposes only. We encourage you to seek personalized investment advice from your financial professional. For all tax and legal advice, please consult your CPA or attorney. Investment advisory services are offered through Authentic Counsel, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Cabin Securities, a registered broker-dealer. The content of this podcast does not constitute an offer of securities. Offerings can only be made through an offering memorandum, and you should carefully examine risk factors and other information contained in the memorandum.